boundaries and unspoken connections. Growing up, there was always something about Blake that made me roll my eyes. He was the classic, annoying, older stepbrother who knew exactly how to get under my skin. Our parents got married when I was 9, and he was 11, blending our families into one not-so-perfect but still loving chaos. Back then, I never thought twice about the fact that we weren't blood-related. I mean, who cared, right? He was Blake, irritating, loud, and always hogging the bathroom mirror. But things started to change this one summer. Mom and Dad, big wine lovers, decided to head off on their annual vineyard getaway, leaving Blake and me to fend for ourselves. It wasn't the first time we'd been left alone, but this time felt different. There was this strange energy in the air. I don't even know how to describe it. It was like everything had shifted just a little off balance. I noticed it first when Blake came back from the gym one afternoon. He had always been kind of lanky, but suddenly, the guy looked good. Broader shoulders, tousled dark hair falling just right, and this weird new confidence that made him seem like he didn't even need to try anymore. He was still Blake, but at the same time, not. It hit me hard that evening. We were on the couch, binge-watching some dumb horror flick we'd both seen 1,000 times. Normally, we'd throw popcorn at each other or argue about who screamed louder during jump scares, but that night, we were quiet. The kind of silence that isn't awkward but feels heavy. I glanced over at Blake, and that's when I caught him, his eyes lingering on me a second too long. He looked away fast, but my stomach did this weird flip, and I couldn't shake it. "What?" I said, trying to laugh it off, even though my voice cracked. "Nothing," he replied with that cocky half-smile. "You just looked different for a second." That was it. A small comment, but it burrowed into my brain, making me hyper-aware of everything about him. The way his laugh rumbled a little deeper than before. How his voice had softened around the edges. The worst part, I couldn't stop looking at him now either. The real shift happened a few days later. We were both wiped out from cleaning the garage, and Blake dropped onto the couch next to me, groaning dramatically like he'd just fought a war. I threw a pillow at him. "Quit whining." "You love it," he shot back. And then, as if it just popped into his head, he asked, "You ever think it's weird, us living together like this?" I froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "We're not actually related. Like, there's no blood here, you know?" I couldn't even look at him. My brain was racing a mile a minute, trying to process where he was going with this. "That doesn't mean anything," I mumbled. Blake laughed, but it was soft, the kind of laugh that carried weight. "I'm just saying, people assume a lot, but they don't really know us." The conversation ended there, but those words stuck to me like glue. It was like he had opened a door I didn't even know existed, and now I couldn't close it. I started replaying every memory with him in my head. The times we'd fallen asleep watching movies, the inside jokes, the way we always knew what the other was thinking without saying a word. For the first time, I couldn't stop seeing him for what he really was. Not a brother, but a guy. One night, it all came to a head. It was late, and I was curled up in the living room scrolling through my phone when Blake wandered in, all sleepy-eyed and rumpled. He didn't even say anything, just flopped onto the other side of the couch, so close I could feel the warmth of him. For a while, we just sat there, the silence stretching longer and longer until he finally spoke. "Chloe," he said, his voice low enough to make my heart stop, "tell me I'm not the only one feeling this." My throat went dry. "Feeling what?" "This, us." He waved his hand between us, his eyes locked on mine. "We've always been close, but this feels different. You know it too." I couldn't breathe. I wanted to laugh it off, push him away, anything to break the moment. But instead, I just stared back, feeling every word he wasn't saying. I hated that he was right. I hated that I didn't want to walk away. "Blake, we can't," I finally whispered, my voice shaking. "It's not okay. We're family." He shook his head slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "We're not, though. Not really. And no one has to know." That was the moment I realized I had a choice. Shut the door he'd opened, or step through it. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. "I can't," I whispered again, but it sounded weak, like I didn't even believe myself. The next few days were hell. I avoided him like my life depended on it, but every time I caught his gaze, I felt that same pull dragging me back. Finally, Blake made his decision for me. "I need to get out of here for a while," he said one morning. "Maybe some space will help us figure out whatever the hell this is." When he walked out that door, the house felt empty. I'd always thought I hated living with Blake, but the truth hit me like a brick. I missed him. I missed the teasing, the shared jokes, the way he always knew how to make me laugh. I missed him. Weeks turned into months. I buried myself in school, in friends, in anything to keep from thinking about him. But every quiet moment brought Blake's words back to me, over and over again. "No one has to know." And then out of nowhere, he came back. It was late, and I'd just come home from a long day when I found him sitting on the porch, looking just like I remembered. Tousled hair, that same old smirk, but with something softer in his eyes. "Hey," he said simply. "Hey," I replied, my voice catching in my throat. We stood there for what felt like forever, both of us waiting for the other to say something. Finally, he broke the silence. "Can we talk?" I nodded, stepping aside to let him in, because deep down I already knew. Whatever was between us wasn't going anywhere. Share your thoughts. Have you ever felt a connection you couldn't explain? One that pushed every boundary you thought you knew? Drop your stories in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Silent Confessions for more stories that uncover the truths we're afraid to speak.